Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Qizhi. Coming up in this edition, Donald Trump's administration has revoked Harvard University's authority to enroll foreign nationals. U.S. federal authorities have charged a man accused of killing 2 Israeli embassy staffers with murder. And scientists in Australia say the Great Barrier Reef isn't getting enough time to recover from the increasing impacts of climate change. We begin in North America. The Trump administration has revoked Harvard University's authority to enroll foreign nationals, who make up more than a quarter of this student body, in a dramatic escalation of the president's confrontation with the Ivy League institution. Analysts say the move is part of a broader campaign targeting elite American universities. Jay Green, a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, explains.
I think the Trump administration is trying to remind elite institutions in the United States that they are the beneficiaries of very large subsidies from taxpayers. And so they do have to serve American interests. They are not global institutions, or if they wish to be global institutions, then they have to give up access to very large taxpayer subsidies. I think the Trump administration is demonstrating that they're going to prevail in this fight with Harvard. I know that people think Harvard has over $50 billion in endowment and they're, have this status and this history. That's all true, but the federal government is bigger and richer and will prevail here in this fight. And I think Harvard understands that. And really all that they're doing is positioning for a better deal. And so the litigation that Harvard has been pursuing is just to try to get a better agreement with the administration. And I suspect that's ultimately where we're going to end up.
More than 27% of Harvard's 2024-25 enrollment consists of international students. The Ivy League school has denounced the administration's decision as unlawful. The dispute follows the university's refusal to provide data that could implicate international students in protests or actions potentially leading to deportation. Harvard currently hosts nearly 7,000 students from over 100 countries. Staying in the United States, federal authorities have charged a suspect with the murder of 2 Israeli embassy staff members. FBI Assistant Director in Charge Steve Jensen says investigators are treating the case as both an act of terrorism and a hate crime.
We're continuing to investigate and contact the subject's associates, his family members, and co-workers. We are also executing search warrants for his electronic devices, reviewing his social media accounts, and all of his internet postings.
The suspect did not enter a plea during a court appearance. The victims were an American woman and an Israeli man. Evan Fairclough has more on the incident in Washington.
Israeli communities across the world are on heightened alert after what's been described as a stunning and brazen fatal shooting of 2 staff working at the Israeli embassy here in Washington, D.C., outside the Jewish Capitol Museum in the heart of downtown Washington, D.C. The embassy staff who died in this attack have been named by Israeli authorities as Aaron Lishinsky, an Israeli citizen, and Sarah Milgram, an American citizen, who were both due to be engaged to be married according to Israeli authorities. Arguably as brazen as the attack in the heart of the US Capitol was the fact that much of the aftermath was caught on video, with the gunman protesting the treatment of Palestinian citizens in Gaza during Israel's ongoing military campaign in that region.
Free Palestine!
And one eyewitness even interacted with the gunman, initially mistaking him for somebody caught up in the chaos.
So he pulls out his keffiyeh and he says, I did it. I did it for Gaza. Free Palestine. And he's chanting this. And then suddenly the police come in and they arrest him.
Inevitably, there's been condemnation around the world for these killings by leaders in the international community, including US President Donald Trump. But Trump has also been under pressure for some time from members of the international community to try to do more to rein in Israel in its ongoing military campaign in Gaza, amid mounting concerns from humanitarian leaders that this campaign will lead to the starvation of the Palestinian population there. And some countries, notably Canada, France and the United Kingdom, have gone a step further, sanctioning Israel over its campaign in Gaza. The alleged gunman has been named by police as 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago. Heavily armed police were seen outside his apartment building on Thursday morning. He'll be prosecuted by authorities in Washington, D.C. One thing is clear as the authorities investigate what happened here is that the Jewish Capitol Museum had some sense of the heightened security concerns before this fatal shooting. It was one of a number of local non-profit organizations here that was awarded extra funding to increase its security.
That is Owen Fairclough on the aftermath of a deadly shooting involving Israeli embassy staff in Washington. Following the attack, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu blamed anti-Semitism, linking the incident to the October 7th Hamas attacks. Jonathan Regev has more reactions from Israel.
There's now a question of the safety of Israeli diplomats abroad. If this is happening in the United States, a friendly country, a safe country, what would happen to diplomats? What are the dangers in other countries, perhaps not as safe, perhaps not as friendly? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as we've heard in the early hours of the morning, issuing a statement expressing, of course, condolences to the families of both the embassy personnel killed, to everybody working at the Israeli embassy in the United States, and strongly condemning the attack in very strong words. A few hours later, Foreign Minister Gideon Saar also putting out a statement. Let's hear some of it.
There is a direct line connecting anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement to this murder. This incitement is also done by leaders and officials of many countries and international organizations, especially from Europe.
Leaders of countries in Europe, says the foreign minister, not directly pointing at France, at the UK, who are very critical of Israel in these days. Also noted Spain, where the Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, is very vocal towards Israel, but this is probably what he means.
Netanyahu also accused French, Canadian and British leaders for going against history for their condemnation of Israel's renewed Gaza offensive. Elsewhere in the Middle East, United Nations humanitarians say the first aid for Gaza in 11 weeks includes nutrition supplies, flour, medicines and other essentials. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said UNICEF will repackage the supplies and deliver them to dozens of distribution points. It said the limited shipment is far from meeting the needs of the 2.1 million people in Gaza. The United Nations has urged Israeli authorities to facilitate the movement of humanitarian convoys. In other parts of Asia, the China CEEC Expo is underway. The event in Eastern China offers a platform for 14 countries in Central and Eastern Europe, along with 9 CEEC Plus countries that are attending in Ningbo. Slovenia and Slovakia are the guests of honor at this edition. They are members of the 17+1 cooperation framework between China and the countries in the region. Iran spoke with State Secretary Martus Franges at the Slovenian Ministry of Economy, Tourism and Sport. He discussed the country's growing ties with China and the potential for greater economic cooperation.
What measures is your government taking to help businesses enter and grow in Chinese market?
Specifically using these kind of opportunities that businesses can meet businesses, that people can meet people and establish collaboration. I'm pretty much sure that Slovenian economy, with its advantages, highly innovative, complex, automated, digitalized and robotized economy, can prove itself with its products also on the demanding Chinese market. Slovenia is a country in the heart of Europe. It is the best possible entrance to the European market because it provides the best and shortest gateway for shipping from China to Europe, from Europe to China. We would like to enhance and evolve ourselves into the next European hub for innovation of advanced and sustainable technologies.
In the next 5 years, how will Slovenia leverage the 17+1 cooperation framework to strengthen ties with China?
Well, I think that China CEC mechanism is already the best possible tool to see where are untapped potentials, how we can bring Slovenian small, medium enterprises to the China market, and it provides the tools and support in order to do so. Our strong biopharmaceutical industry that presents nearly a third of our exports. Because we import a lot of medical substances from China, we saw a great growth of Chinese exports to Slovenia. In just 5 years, it multiplied by 5. So we would like to rebalance our foreign trade deficit, and I'm really glad that we have a support of Chinese government in order to do so. We met with a lot of companies these days from the emerging Chinese automotive sector. We don't hide the ambition to localize a portion of Chinese EV production in Europe, in Slovenia. In that sense, we are in communication with several of the Chinese automakers, but also we would like to bring Slovenian automotive industry, Slovenian suppliers, tested throughout the decades of collaborating with the European automotive industry to China, because being innovative is a part of our national DNA. We are not, just a manufacturer. We are an innovator with interesting technologies. Our startups, research institutes, as well as established industry can provide a good solution.
That was Slovenian State Secretary Martuš Franges on seeking more opportunities through China. Finally, in Oceania, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says humanity is destroying biodiversity at a lightning pace. This warning came as scientists in Australia say the Great Barrier Reef isn't getting enough time to recover from the increasing impacts of climate change. Greg Navarro finds out about the threats and attempts to save the corals.
There's a lot riding on the corals growing in tanks inside a specially lit lab at the Australian Institute of Marine Science.
These corals in particular are from 2014, 2015.
They're part of a world-leading program aimed at helping corals on the Great Barrier Reef adapt to a rapidly changing environment.
We're seeing stress, mortality events at an unprecedented rate.
That's because the world's oceans are warming at an alarming rate, largely fueled by greenhouse gases. Higher temperatures are causing mass bleaching events.
It's almost like not eating for us. If we were to starve ourselves, we too would get very sick.
We've seen 6 major mass bleaching events on the Great Barrier Reef in the last decade, since 2016. The worst of those occurred on the Great Barrier Reef in 2024, and we actually saw another mass bleaching event in the northern section of the system in 2025.
There's another climate-driven factor that's currently impacting the reef here, and it's linked to widespread flooding parts of Queensland has experienced in the past year. It's created massive flood plumes that are damaging corals along a more than 700-kilometer stretch of the coastline, and in places it extends more than 100 kilometers out into the ocean.
Coral reefs account for just 1% of the ocean's surface, yet they support about a quarter of the world's marine life.
These reefs are really important for things like wave protection, a source for novel medicines. For example, Alzheimer's and cancer medicines have come from coral reefs.
The Great Barrier Reef supports a thriving tourism industry that employs about 65,000 people and generates billions of dollars for the state of Queensland.
Tourism knows the risk of climate change to the industry itself, and it is scared because it is concerning, because so many lives do depend on having a healthy reef.
Yolanda Waters is the Chief Executive Officer of Divers for Climate, a collection of divers and tourism professionals calling for greater action on climate change.
We've just surveyed 1,000 divers around Australia. 91% said they've experienced climate change firsthand, and over half have said it has directly impacted their mental health.
Researchers at the Australian Institute of Marine Science are working on a range of methods to help corals survive, from developing probiotics to increase resilience to stress and disease to making corals more heat tolerant.
We're testing and growing corals that we can outplant onto the reef that have enhanced thermal properties.
But given the rate the world's oceans are warming, scientists admit even the most promising techniques being developed here won't be enough to preserve the world's reef systems. Not until the world addresses carbon emissions.
That was Greg Navarro reporting. Now, recapping the headlines, Donald Trump's administration has revoked Harvard University's ability to enroll foreign nationals. U.S. federal authorities have charged a man accused of killing 2 Israeli embassy staffers with murder. And scientists in Australia say the Great Barrier Reef isn't getting enough time to recover from the increasing impacts of climate change. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, the podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to the Beijing Hour, a one-hour podcast news magazine program. We would welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Qi Zhi. Thank you for listening.